Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Hi. What a good-looking crowd, I'm telling you. I'll just wait. I'll just stare at you all and make you feel uncomfortable. And there you go. How's it going? You know, when you're an MC, it's just the greatest power in the world. You have a short time in your life that you have complete control over a crowd, and it's absolutely heaven. Okay, everybody ready? We got our speakers ready. Our speakers are here. We all set? Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Brenda Halloran, and I am the very proud chair of the board of Startup Canada. And I'd like to welcome you on behalf of Victoria Lennox, our CEO, and Cyprian, and the Startup Canada team. And thank you for joining us this evening as we talk about entrepreneurs and have some amazing speakers who are going to give us some information and their insights onto the Canada entrepreneurship ecosystem. Startup Canada is the national rallying community and voice for Canada's 2.3 million entrepreneurs, and a lot of you are sitting in the room here today. In 5 years, Startup Canada has grown to represent 150,000 entrepreneurs, work with more than 400 industry partners, and is on target to support new businesses in 100 startup communities across Canada. Ours is a model of collaboration. We work together with the private sector, government, and the entrepreneurship ecosystem to build an innovative and entrepreneurial Canada, wherein Canadian companies start, scale, and thrive. The Innovation Forum is proudly presented by the Startup Canada Private Sector Leadership Advisory Council, an initiative which brings together senior executives from non-competitive industries servicing small businesses and entrepreneurs in Canada. Its members include Intuit Canada, UPS Canada, True Shield Insurance, Scotiabank, MasterCard, and Rogers Communications. Each of these companies have shown strong commitments to Canada's entrepreneur community, and we are proud to work with them, and we sincerely appreciate your support. Tonight, we are so pleased to host you, Canada's industry executives, high-growth entrepreneurs, and government decision-makers to share and spread ideas on the role of industry in building an innovative and entrepreneurial country. As you know, small businesses play a key role in the Canadian economy, accounting for 98% of all firms and 87% of all new jobs. As we look forward to the next 150 years of entrepreneurship and innovation, it will be these businesses starting and scaling today that will be the flag bearers of Canada's global competitiveness. And it's up to us, all of us, to work together to create a supportive environment for those companies today and to foster their success in a more integrated global economy tomorrow. Tonight, thanks to the PSLA and our partners at Bennett Jones, you will receive exclusive insights into the state of the startup ecosystem in Canada and globally. Learn about opportunities for anchor companies to support small businesses, startups, and scale-ups, and network with decision makers from across government and industry. And by the sounds of it, you were doing a lot of networking. Right? A lot of business deals already? We have an amazing lineup of speakers, including the Honourable Bardish Chagger, Minister of Small Business and Tourism, and she is on her way here, so she's going to be joining us hopefully in about a half an hour. Bruce Croxon, serial entrepreneur, former Dragon, and host of The Disruptors. Victoria Lennox, CEO and co-founder of Startup Canada. Jeff Cates, CEO and President of Intuit Canada. Dr. Ilse Trunick, CEO of Mars Discovery District, and Anthony Lacavera, founder and chairman of Global Live Holdings. But first, I would like to thank Bennett Jones for welcoming us into your space and invite Ranjiv Dillon, partner of the firm, to speak. Ranjiv.
Thank you, Brenda. As a partner of Startup Canada, I was asked to say a few words, and I'm going to take that quite literally and say just a few words. As Brenda said, my name is Ranj Dillon. I'm a partner here at Bennett Jones. We've partnered up with Startup Canada for the past couple of years, and it's great to see so much support, so many great smiling faces, so many entrepreneurs. For my own practice, I work with small entrepreneurs all the way up to very, very large clients, multi-billion-dollar international companies. And I can tell you from my own practice that supporting entrepreneurs is a very important part of our economy. And it's great to see so many people and so much support for that here. I do want to thank a few people, and I'll thank them generally. I want to thank Startup Canada for organizing this. I want to thank my own internal team at Bennett Jones, including some of the smiling faces I see there, Pat, Remy, and Ron, for working on this initiative with Startup Canada. I want to thank the speakers, the attendees, and I'm sure she'll be in half an hour, and I want to thank the Honourable Minister for taking time out of her very, very busy schedule. She's learned a valuable lesson about Toronto traffic today, I imagine. So again, it's great to see so much support here for entrepreneurs in Canada, so enjoy the rest of the event. Thanks, guys, for attending.
Okay, so we're kind of juggling the agenda because we're waiting for the minister to arrive, and we're trying to look like we're not really not panicking or anything. But how are we doing so far? So are we doing good? Thank you very much. And I'm going to share with you. I didn't bring my glasses, so I'm having trouble reading. So if I just maybe. No, they have to be really magnifiers. I'm kidding. So the poor Startup Canada team have been frantically trying to get like triple font so I can see it. So you just might as well face it and tell people right up front and get it over with, right? Get it done. I was a politician for 8 years, still recovering, and I believe in telling the truth. For those who don't know, I was the mayor of Waterloo from 2006 to 2014. So I have some very interesting stories to tell, and the book should be coming out soon. So right now I'd be saying thank you, Minister Chagger, but she's not here. So what am I doing next? Yeah, I'm just going to wing it, okay? Ranjiv. Okay. Without further ado, to introduce our first speaker, please welcome Paul Gasper, and that's why you've been looking at me, Director of Small Business at UPS Canada and Chair of the Startup Canada Private Sector Leadership Advisory Council. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that, Brenda, because you're right. We do need to wing it a little bit because I was supposed to introduce the minister. So obviously she's not here. But thank you again for the introduction, and welcome to the first Startup Canada Innovation Forum. And it is presented by the Private Sector Leadership Advisory Committee. As Brenda mentioned, my name is Paul Gasper, and I am the Director of Small Business at UPS Canada. UPS and Startup Canada has been working for almost 4 years together to ensure that we can craft a vision and also develop resources to challenge our entrepreneurs to make them go beyond our borders and to go global. She also indicated that I'm the co-chair of the Private Sector Leadership Advisory Council Committee. Try saying that 3 times quickly. But it is an innovative group, and it's an innovative group of actual corporate leaders that are servicing small business. And we already heard who some of those businesses are, but I want to mention their names again. And it is Intuit Canada. We obviously have True Shield Insurance, Rogers, Scotiabank, MasterCard Canada, and of course, UPS Canada as well. And the reason why the PSLA was constructed is because we want to create a platform to align and focus the resources of anchor companies so that we can advance the success of entrepreneurs in Canada, which is critical. And that's the point of today's forum. We want to make sure that we continue to build on that platform. We want to continue to facilitate the conversation and the knowledge sharing wherein we can get our government leaders as well as corporate Canada and of course the entrepreneurship community to come together and have that unified vision that we can actually look as to what each one of us roles are to ensure that we can build an innovation nation. And that of course is one of the anchor things or anchor items that the minister is working on, but we'll make sure that we tap into that again when she's here later this afternoon or later this evening. Now, one of the things I wanted to do as well too is leave everyone with a takeaway. In fact, it's more of a challenge. I would ask that you go back and try to determine how you and your organization can help our entrepreneurships and our small business. What is it that you can do to make sure that they can grow faster? What is it that you can do to ensure that they can enter new markets? How can we together build a more competitive economy? I can share with you one of the ways that UPS is doing that. And we're working with our small businesses and ensuring that they understand that one of the things that we're focusing and tackling is an ambitious but also important agenda on international trade. We want to make sure that it's easier for our businesses to move goods across our borders, but at the same time making sure that we can build and give them additional support that they require as they're trying to grow their businesses. Now, I was going to have the opportunity to introduce the minister, and hopefully we have an opportunity to do that later. But at this point, I'd like to thank you for your time and turn it back over to Brenda.
Thank you very much, Paul. So it is now my pleasure to introduce one of Canada's most well-known entrepreneurs. Bruce Croxon is the founder of the massive online dating venture Lavalife, which sold for over $172 million. So shall I tell the story, Bruce? Bruce is responsible for my supreme happiness because a lot of pressure there, a lot of pressure. So 12 years ago, I was a single mom thinking, there must be a wonderful man out there for me somewhere. And there was this new thing called online dating. So my friend said, you're going to meet a killer. You're going to meet like the worst person in the world. This is terrifying. Don't do it. And I said, well, what have I got to lose? So I found this dating site called lavalife.com. And I met a few gentlemen, but I was pretty nervous because usually, on these dating sites, if people can't spell or write a sentence, that you're in trouble. So you can weed them out pretty fast. But this lovely person kept coming through, and we were communicating, and he was very nice. And I stood him up on our first date because my teenage daughter was winging out, and he had 4 daughters, so he understood that. So we had a date, and we got married. And he's the love of my life. Isn't that cool? So I meant to send you a thank you card, but it's in the mail. I'll get that to you later today. So enough about me. But that's how amazing his technology is. He's now running a startup company, Round 13, building a chain of West Coast luxury spas. Hey, do we get spa days after this? And has brought entrepreneurship into the mainstream media as a dragon on CBC's Dragon's Den and a co-host of The Disruptors. Please join me in welcoming Bruce Croxon.
Happy to have been such a pivotal person in your life, and mother of goodness. And so happy to see so many old Lavalife clients in the audience. So you're supposed to be listening to the Minister of Trade, and you get the online dating guy. Oh, it's so appropriate, I'm actually thrilled to be talking with you because I'm actually most at home. Thank you, Startup Canada, for having me. I'm most at home in a room full of entrepreneurs and people that are supporting the entrepreneurial community. It's something that I've been involved in all my career. So when the request comes in, it's an easy yes. I'm tasked with talking about building an entrepreneurial culture today, and I'm supposed to do that in about 7 minutes. But with the minister late, I'm thinking maybe I can take 8. Okay, so all right, but perfect. All right. So, it's probably my favorite topic because at the end of the day, despite having spent my career in tech and have been, firsthand observer about the amazing period of time we're in and the amazing things that technology can do, and I actually firmly believe that as a country, this is our time. There's been a lot of talk about it, but I've been in this space for a long time. This is our time. We've got a lot, the money's starting to come into the sector. We've got second and third time entrepreneurs that are graduating with capital that are willing to reinvest in our ecosystem. We've got a guy down south of the border that perceived her real is creating an environment where people do not feel welcome, people that we would be very anxious to welcome. I can't tell you the number of first-time Canadians that are first-generation Canadians that are in my office looking for capital, willing to work 7 days a week to make it happen. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about Canada, and the stars are aligning. I really think we're in the right place at the right time. So Startup Canada, your efforts, and all the other incubators, Mars, doing the right thing, right place at the right time. Culture, what I was going to get to is, despite seeing all the wonderful things that technology can do, at the end of the day, and I've been in this space since I was 22 years old. At the end of the day, it all does come back to people, right? And people make culture. You can have the best tech in the world, you can have the best ideas in the world, without the culture and the people behind it to make it happen, the idea is going nowhere. And trust me, I've seen a lot of ideas. 3 seasons on the Dragon's Den, 240 pitches a year. Lava Life, a brand that never got above 100 million in sales, but swung above its weight. Everybody knew it. Became a magnet for people pitching ideas. A lot more ideas than I've met people that can execute on them. So if people, that's a side note, if you have people on your teams that can execute, those are the people that are gold. Ideas really are a dime a dozen, especially today with how quickly things are moving. I get asked a lot, given the profile of Lava and, our successful exit for Canada was a good number, and it led to a lot of questions. What was the secret to the success of Lava Life? And, ask any entrepreneur why he's been successful, him or her has been successful. It's a tough question to answer, and I didn't have a good answer, never did, but it got me thinking, right? And I went through the checklist of the things that were in our favor at the time. The tech, when I started Lava, took up 3/4 of this room. It was big, expensive. People didn't really know what we were doing, and it served as a barrier to entry for anybody else that wanted to come and compete with us. So we had room and space and time. Whole other talk on why that doesn't apply today and how quickly we have to move, but we had that at the time. We were 4 guys in our 20s. One of my favorite piece of advice to young entrepreneurs, today more than ever before, it's so important to do what you love, because you're going to have to work at it 7 days a week. So when you're working on Sunday, if it's something you love, maybe it doesn't seem so much like work. So we were 4 guys in our 20s. I can assure you, if we weren't building a system to better meet girls, we would have been out trying to meet girls on our own, right? So we were in a sweet spot, Didn't have to be home, to look after family or kids or that kind of thing. So the timing was right. One of my partners in particular, you have to have a subject matter expert. This guy was a dating machine. 3-4 times a day he'd be out on dates, and he'd come running back, and this is what we have to change on the system. And it's so funny because I hear about agile development. It's all the rage, right? Ed was very agile. So tick, tick, tick. The alternatives to online dating at the time were, as it is today, bar scene, right? You can meet someone in a bar, friends of friends. Some people meet through church. The alternative back then was back of the 2 minutes left. Seriously? Okay. So I'm just getting going. All right. So all those things were true, but when I really think about it, or you giving me the peace sign? You're just peace sign. Okay. Okay, all those things were true, but what really worked for us was how much time we actually did put into the culture. And I'll give you 2 quick examples. Two of the values, if you will, for the company that were really important to us were teamwork and open-mindedness. We're an online dating site. You can imagine some of the conversations that were going on in our boardrooms, and it was really important that if you came to a job at our place, you didn't come with preconceived opinions on how people chose to lead their life. If you were homophobic, if you didn't condone premarital sex, nothing wrong with that. A lot, to each their own. But you wouldn't have been a good fit with us because we were all about. We weren't all about. We weren't all about premarital sex. We were a lot about premarital sex, right? So, the point being, we screened for open-mindedness, which combined with a team-based environment, and we had a very interesting exercise how we got at that. We'd have people come in for a job. 9 finalists came into a boardroom. We divide the room up into 3 teams of 3, and we handed each of them a piece of paper. It said NASA Man on the Moon exercise was an actual exercise that NASA used to train their astronauts. I know, yes, number 1. I feel good right now. So basically said, you've crash landed on the moon. Here are the 12 things you need to survive. They're all important. Some are more important than others. You did the exercise, added up the scores, and then we divided the people into 3 groups of 3 and asked them to do it again. In 15 years of running that exercise, I never once saw an individual score beat a team score, right? So that told people that wanted to come work with us that we were really serious about this teamwork thing. Why are we so serious? Generally speaking, more people in on a decision make for a better decision. We just showed you that. And we got to see how they worked together, right? And saw how people gelled and molded. And I come from a place where I don't believe people change much past the age of 11, right? So you are who you are from a very young age. I'm not going to take somebody that is showing me right in front of my face that they can't work well with others and convince them to be a team member. So very important if you're trying to create an entrepreneurial culture, change an existing culture, identify what the words are that are meaningful for the times that we're in. I've got a few suggestions. One would be continuous learning. We're in a period of incredibly rapid change and new information coming at us every minute, every day. I would suggest comfort with change would be a value I'd be looking for in people that I want to surround myself with today. There's a few bastions of industries where you can survive without being comfortable with change, but they're dwindling in an awful hurry. So I'm screening for that. I still believe so much in teamwork. Nobody has all the answers. You have to work well with others. There's a few people, but they're very, very few. So working together, understanding where it is that you want to go as a company, surrounding yourself with the people that are going to be conducive to success in this new environment, an environment that we've never seen before in terms of the pace of change and the amount of information. Don't make it just a word on the wall. Right? Try and figure out how to get it actually into your hiring practices and the people you choose to surround yourself with. If you do that right, the right group of people working on the right thing can achieve anything. Thank you. Gotta go.
Thank you very much, Bruce. And boy, talk about a true Canadian success story. And I agree, it is our time in Canada. And this group, I know you're all feeling that way too. So up next, we have the CEO and co-founder of Startup Canada herself. Will provide you with exclusive insights into the state of the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Canada and globally. Victoria Lennox is the first Canadian and one of the youngest recipients of the Queen's Award for Enterprise Promotion. She's also recognized by the United Nations Development Programme and the EU as one of the foremost experts in entrepreneurship education, ecosystem and program architecture, governance, and policy. And we're also very proud of Victoria. I'm extremely proud, and I'm so proud and honored to be chair of the board of Startup Canada and get to work with this amazing woman who teaches me something new every single day. Please join me in welcoming Victoria Lennox.
Oh, I have to follow Bruce. Oh my goodness. Well, it's a real pleasure to be here this evening with friends from across the GTA and Southern Ontario. Thank you so much for being here and for your support of Startup Canada and also your support of Canada's entrepreneurship community. I have 5 to 7 minutes, and it looks like the team is monitoring us very closely. So I'm gonna just go through some of the global trends we're seeing at Startup Canada, some of the domestic trends. A lot of these things will be a really nice summation for those of us that are working in the ecosystem, and I welcome a conversation afterwards about those. I'd also like to speak about the role of culture, building on Bruce, and Bruce, I couldn't agree more of the centrality of people, and how the ecosystem is functioning and what we need to do to now progress the ecosystem to scale our great companies and to get every Canadian involved in this innovation thing. And then just some reflections as I've been building Startup Canada over the last 5 years, and some of the challenges I think that we can work together to address in order to make Canada the best country for entrepreneurs globally. So we'll start with kind of the global trends, and this is just a real summation for you. So we're seeing globally a geopolitical uncoupling. We're moving away from bilateral or multilateralism to more bilateral relationships. This is going to be seen in Canada-U.S. relations. And the one thing that we're really holding on to in Ottawa right now is our partnership with Europe. So what's happening with the Canada-Europe trade agreement. But what we're seeing is a slowing down globally of globalization. And that's juxtaposed with the speeding up of technology and the accelerated interconnectivity of everything. It's opening up opportunities for education and the democratization of entrepreneurship, even in the most remote and conflict-ridden zones across the world. We're seeing the rise of entrepreneurial centers and hotspots beyond the US, beyond Silicon Valley, including Canada. In Israel, Singapore, provinces across China, India, and Europe. Entrepreneurship is everywhere, and entrepreneurship is the new language of the world. It's the new form of democracy. It's the new way of engaging socially in development projects as well as trade. There's a global commitment to entrepreneurship and innovation, and it's only increasing as markets shift. With President Obama as the global leader in entrepreneurship and him no longer being president, it leaves a huge opportunity for Canada to take the role. There's a changing workforce across all of the world, and it requires new skills, and we're seeing that here in Canada. We're also seeing the rise of citizen entrepreneurship through the sharing economy and changing concepts of how we work in the workplace. Social innovation, augmented reality, blockchain, fintech, clean tech, agritech, everything is shifting. Our economy is changing, and is every Canadian keeping up? So let's look at the Canadian ecosystem. Politics matters. Look at the reputation of our Prime Minister globally. Politics matters globally. The world is looking at Canada, but how much is politics manifesting in change domestically? We're still looking at execution. Everyone in this role has a role to play in the execution of the innovation agenda and the vision. We see scaling hubs beyond Toronto and Montreal. Look at Fredericton, their cybersecurity cluster. Look at Winnipeg. It's incredible. Canada is booming with entrepreneurship. The first 5 years of Startup Canada, I think, was a real coming together of the startup community, the grassroots startup community, early stage startups. The next 5 years is all about scaling this community and making sure that we see the rise of the rest with rural and remote and getting everybody involved. Social innovation matters in Canada. People are talking about social innovation more and more to solve pressing social issues around healthcare, the environment, Indigenous inclusion in our economy, these types of issues. But the regulatory pace is not keeping up with the social change that we're seeing. Canada continues to lag behind as an innovation nation when it comes to our investments in research and development from the private sector. This gap is only widening. It's not becoming smaller. Our businesses are not going global. Inclusivity and diversity are core Canadian competencies. So what am I seeing in Canada? A rise of the rest, of rural and remote, especially in agritech and some really interesting fields of technology and innovation. We're seeing incubators and accelerators pop up with fuzzy clusters around them. And we're trying to identify as a country what these clusters mean and how we're going to use these clusters to compete globally. It's all about platforms for companies and for countries. It's about building them and joining them. It's all about platforms. It's rise of the digital, Periscope, Facebook Live, YouTube, media. Entrepreneurs need beta testers. They need customers. They need exposures. While places in the world are rising the right, we as Canadians need to rise the rest. So in terms of global trends and what's happening in Canada, it's a very exciting time. And yesterday, I had the opportunity to join an event with CATA Alliance in Ottawa. And the CEO of MyTax says, is Canada ready for this shift? And I would say everybody in this room tonight is already shifting things. We're already moving it. But are we moving together? And are we moving fast enough and urgently enough? So that brings me to ecosystem. And I'm just building on a culture that Bruce was just speaking about. The role of ecosystem. So what's the role of industry? It's to buy. It's to build entrepreneurs and companies into global supply chains. It's to build entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial culture into their companies. It's about creating innovative teams. It's about investing. It's about building the skills of not just their employees, but the communities within which they operate their companies. It's about giving back to the community. So when I see amazing companies like Rogers working with Startup Canada to provide digital literacy skills to entrepreneurs, or working with Intuit Canada and MasterCard Canada to improve financial literacy skills and reduce startup failure in Canada, it's how we all work together in order to drive forward some of the challenges that we face. It's how we buy from startups, it's how we build them into supply chains, it's how we invest in communities. When I look at entrepreneurs, they're solving problems. That's their role. They're there to solve problems and seize opportunities. So entrepreneurs like Marissa McTasney, who takes pink work boots and is empowering the skills sector amongst women. When I see Janelle Hines or Kylie Lavelle, who are empowering the next generation of youth, or Andrea Palmer, or Suzanne Grant, who are changing the way healthcare exists, Suzanne is helping blind people see with her technology. Andrea is helping young people with autism to be able to be more understood by the people around them. Entrepreneurs are solving problems and they're seizing opportunities. That's their role. Government's role, and Minister Chagar's role, is to create the conditions within which entrepreneurs can flourish. It's about creating the regulations that help to enable innovation to happen and to make sure to get out of the way when it's necessary and incent when there's a market failure. So that's the role of government. And what we see there is a minister who's coming from Waterloo Region, a wonderful region known for innovation, with a political government background. And now she's representing women, she's representing her community, she's representing small business, and she's the House leader. So you have an individual and an opportunity of time of shifting with industry and with entrepreneurs. We have amazing role for media. People like Bruce inspire Canadians. They inspire Canadians every week on television. Yeah, Rick Spence in his columns at the National Post, Jessica at BetaKit inspiring the tech community. Amazing role for media in creating this story and helping to create the social rhetoric that's necessary in order for us to self-realize what this innovation community could be. We need ecosystem builders like Edwin Frondoso, Jennifer Green, Chad Ballantyne, Mary from Startup Quincy Bay. We need community builders like Melanie Campbell. These are the entrepreneurs in the community that help to make the ecosystem work and work with awesome organizations like the Mars Discovery District and Communitech and economic development agencies. It's about working together. As the CEO of MyTax said last night, and I couldn't agree more, none of us has to do it all for Canada. None of us has to do it all. It's about working together in order to do that one piece really, really well, and then if we're all focused on the same vision and mission with the same values at our core, we will succeed. So it's about people. It's about passionate Canadians who want to make a difference. So in closing, there's just 3 remarks that I wanted to share, things that are on my mind these days as we drive forward Startup Canada and continue this conversation and continue to push forward. One of the things that concerns me the most when we look at our friends down south is that Canadians can very easily and are being left behind when we talk about the innovation agenda. There is a skills gap. People are being displaced from their careers, and it's happening faster and faster and faster. And it's our role, everybody here in this room, industry, government, the entrepreneurship community, to ensure that every Canadian is part of the innovation agenda, sees the value in moving forward as an innovation economy, and sees a role for themselves in it. Whether they're a farmer or a family-owned business at the side of the street, whoever they are, they need to see themselves as part of it. Because if they don't, we can't progress fast enough. And that requires that they're involved in its creation, because as entrepreneurs, we know that in order to create products and services, in order to create solutions, our customers and end users, our citizens have to be involved in the construction of that new economy. It can't be the privileged creating the economy and everybody else follows. We have to build the Canada we want together. So it's how do we get the middle class involved in building this innovation economy so that it goes beyond rhetoric to something that's meaningful where every Canadian is involved. Not just the 2.3 million entrepreneurs, but the 36 million Canadians. Everybody's pulling together. The second thing is that we really need to promote the world to Canadians. We must go global, and we must promote Canada to the world. And this is our time to shine. This is our time to shine. And thirdly, I truly, truly believe that Canada has a role to play on the humanitarian stage when it comes to entrepreneurship. I had the opportunity just before Christmas to join His Excellency the Governor General on a state visit to the Middle East. We visited Syrian refugee camps, went to Israel, the West Bank, and Jordan. I met some incredible entrepreneurs in Ramallah. And out of that, I went to a startup weekend afterwards and started the Hope Fund, which is like another entrepreneurial initiative. I truly believe that if entrepreneurship and innovation are key exports of Canada, from a humanitarian lens, a trade lens, and a global diplomacy lens, that we can really position Canada as an innovation nation that advances humanity for everybody, advances progress and peace and growth for the world. So thank you so much for joining the Innovation Forum. Thank you so much to the PSLA and to Paul and Tony for your leadership as co-chairs. It's a pleasure to work with everybody. This is just the beginning, and I look forward to the next 5 years with all of you.
All right, are you ready to change the world and put Canada on the map? Isn't she amazing? I just, yeah, honestly. And Victoria gives us a vision of Canada in a different way than what I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs and as startups think about and as companies. We don't, I think, look at Canada in the big vision of becoming a global player. And as Canadians, we really do need to up our game and start globalizing and not be afraid of taking that big step, because nobody wants to go to the United States because Trump's there. They want to come to Canada. That's what I've been hearing from a lot of companies I'm talking to. Is they're concerned. And I just keep saying, come north. Look at us. We're here waiting for you. Thank you, Victoria. Our next speaker, Jeff Cates, has been a long-time supporter of Canada's startup ecosystem and Startup Canada. And he's also a member of the board of Startup Canada, and it's a joy to work with him. Under his leadership as CEO, Intuit Canada has invested its efforts to increase financial literacy and reduce the rate of startup failure within early-stage companies. Please join me in welcoming Jeff Cates. Thank you, Jeff.
You're still okay for 20 minutes? Is that right?
20 minutes.
Oh, that was a shock luck, wasn't it? Wow, I was thinking for a while there I would just talk about online banking and premarital sex. Instead, I'll talk a bit about innovation, which is what I was asked to talk about. But I'll talk about it a bit from kind of my own lens as being an ex-startup and part of the didn't make it past the 5 years mark. And I'll share what I've learned from Intuit and what I wish I would have known back then. And then I'll talk just a little bit about how we're engaging with the startup community, more as a, hey, how can we inspire other organizations to get involved? So kind of high level, I started off as a startup back in university with a couple of buddies. I wouldn't say we saw a problem, we saw an opportunity, and we kind of jumped in. So couple a startup with student, the number of days of craft dinner far exceeded the number of days of steak. We kind of went from job to job. And at the time, as I look back at it, some of the things that got in the way of our success was really cash flow, no surprise, and just lacking a vision of like how big do we want to make it that got us inspired to go through some of the things that came up along the way. And so one of the things that came up along the way for me was joining Hewlett-Packard. And at the time when it popped up, it was right around the time my partners remind me that I was literally reusing coffee filters. So you know how the mindset, it wasn't really that dire, but somehow it felt like it. And so I joined HP and then subsequently Apple and now Intuit. So I ran small business organizations for 2 tech companies, and now I happen to work for a company that I feel so humbled to work for because in our charter is fueling small business success. And so what I've learned from Intuit, because I feel like I've inherited this, is a pattern of innovation that's lasted through over 30 years. Interestingly, only 8 companies, software companies, have made it to their 30th birthday, which I'm really surprised with, but interesting stat. And so when I look back, I'm like, okay, so what's in the DNA that causes that longevity? And in short, I think it comes down to 2 things. One is adaptability, and the other is customer obsession. If you go back in time and look at what we've been up against, I thought I saw Microsoft in the room. Microsoft tried to buy us twice, which we're happy that didn't happen. Nothing against Microsoft. But part was, we went from DOS to Windows 3.1 to web, to mobile, to online cloud platforms, now to looking at AI and how that will transform the industry. And the model that we use is something we call CDI, or customer innovation, or design innovation. And it starts with a big problem that you can enable somebody else to solve, coupled with a durable advantage. So if you put those 3 together, big problem, something that you can solve with durable advantage, that sweet spot is where we focus our time. And then from that, we go to something called Design for Delight. But in short, what it is you take that big problem and you start broad and say, don't, as our founder says, don't fall in love with the solution, fall in love with the problem. So go broad on how you might solve that, get deep customer empathy by going out and doing things like what we do, Follow Me Homes. We'll spend 10,000 hours going out to people's offices or homes to actually see how they're actually working through the problem. And then work that down, so broad to narrow, and then go back broad again, and then go back narrow. And then once you've got down to your kind of core idea, then go as quickly as possible from insight to learning to coding through tactics like rapid prototyping or other lean start-in methods. So the trick is, how quickly can you go from, we've got this idea, to how do we actually code with as minimal rework as possible by actually putting experiences in front of customers. For many of the startups, especially tech startups, this is probably not new news to you. So if I look back now, what I would have done differently, well, one, I would have rethought how we actually spent time with customers. We kind of jumped in with what our solution was at the time. And then two, I would have spent more time kind of prototyping those so that we actually could have created better differentiation. Now, if I look at kind of how we're taking that model and applying it to how we work with startups, as you mentioned, our big focus has been financial literacy, and that kind of goes back to my roots of like not having enough cash and then exiting in the 3 years. And our big focus was, we recognized when we asked small businesses, if you could go back and do one thing differently from what you did before, right? What would you do? And the number one thing we heard was, I wish I'd spent time on financial management skills early, because it only gets harder, especially after you add employees or you get the bills to pay. And so we took that big problem and said, how could we solve that? And engaged other organizations like CPA and Startup Canada and said, how could we solve this? And so the end idea that came out was this idea of boot camps, getting small businesses together or startups together to learn together, working with CPA, delivering content. And that worked really well. To the point that we said, gosh, how could we scale this? How could we make this bigger? And so now we've gone down to two different paths. One is, how do we improve the content even further? Surprisingly, CPAs don't necessarily make the best content. So we've now reworked that. Again, I know there's a few in the room. And then now what we've also done is built digital content so we can scale. And we call this Startup Foundations, and our goal is to get to 10,000 small businesses and teach them financial literacy. And it's with help with organizations like Startup Canada that we're well on our way. My dream for this, recognizing what I went through in my experience, is if we could build something that wasn't just a program or a campaign, but if we could build it where all organizations were feeding into curriculum and content and delivering it in a way that worked for their local small business startups, then we could create a movement. And that movement would look something like what happens with driver's ed programs. Right? So curriculum can be delivered in different ways, but we know that we can drive economic outcomes out of it, a higher success rate of small businesses, hopefully more likely to pay back a loan. And then other organizations like banks, Scotiabank is in the room, might look at that and say, hey, if we know that they're more likely to be successful, then how do we give them an easier access to capital or decrease the interest rate, just as one example. So that's what I aspire to. I hope that we can get there, because I really do believe this is one of the most important things we can do to help improve the success rate of small businesses. My ask to my peers in the room is, whether it's startups, whether it's financial literacy or some other cause, is don't just write the check, get involved and actually figure out how you can make a meaningful contribution, hopefully ideally matched to something that you're personally passionate about, because that gives longevity and durability to the things you're doing. For all of you startups in the room, you are going through an experience now that may feel painful at times and makes you hungry, but you will look back at it with real pride and a sense of accomplishment, as I do, even though we didn't make it past the 3-year mark. Take that empathy, take that learning, and when you get to the 30-year mark, or hopefully somewhere before that, remember how to repurpose what you went through and help give back to the community. A big shout out to Victoria and Startup Canada for giving us an opportunity to help play to our higher power, and we appreciate all the partnership.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I want to thank you, Jeff, for all your support and for believing in Startup Canada. You've been with us for a long time, and having you on the board is just a joy. It's an absolute joy to work with you, and I'm learning a lot from you. And you give us good vision and good structure, and he gives us good advice, doesn't he? He holds us to task. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Ilse Trunik, CEO of the Mars Discovery District and a leading architect of Canada's innovation ecosystem. Ilse joined Mars in 2005 from her role as CEO of Promaxis Technology Ventures and has been an entrepreneur and executive in a number of emerging technology companies. And she truly is an amazing woman. I've known her for quite a while, and she's an inspiration to me. Tonight, Dr. Trunich will share her experiences working with the private sector and government to build a world-class innovation hub. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ilse Trunich. It is a joy. I'm just so honored to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brenda, and thank you to Startup Canada. Good evening, everybody. Well, I knew Bruce was kicking us off, and so I decided to talk about what is probably the least glamorous part of the innovation landscape. And I want to take us back to the basics. If you take a definition of innovation, Harvard Business Review is probably as mainstream as you can get. Innovation is invention that creates value. Practically, that means innovation is invention plus adoption. Because adoption is how our best ideas, our new products and services actually get used. And are employed to create value, economic value or societal value. And our innovation efforts only pay off when that value accrues. Now, we all understand this is a continuum, and it's a very interconnected continuum, but there are two phases. There's the invention piece, which is kind of the supply side, and it is comprised of many, many different things. A pipeline of talented, creative, entrepreneurial people, researchers and research infrastructure, intrapreneurs, social change agents, and of course, thriving ecosystems of startups and young firms. Adoption is about the demand side, the users of new solutions, but also the users of existing solutions. It's about the market pull. And it's both local and global, depending on the nature of the invention. Often, adoption is straightforward. Find a customer, sell them something, sell them more, find an adjacent customer, repeat. Otherwise, in other situations, though, adoption is not straightforward. The customer may be a public agency, a hospital, a utility, a school board, a highly regulated bank. They are not set up to test and buy. And the system into which these new, often disruptive technologies need to be deployed may be highly complex, run by experts, and regulated for good reason. Health and safety reasons, environmental reasons, public benefit reasons. And this is where things get really tricky and unglamorous. But there are 5 reasons why we need to pay more attention to the adoption of innovation in these complex systems. First of all, they represent a big chunk of our economy, and actually areas where we happen to have demonstrated advantages and where we actually have huge global advantage and market opportunities today. Healthcare, energy, environment, financial services, agri-food, resources. Second reason, although many of the applications of these inventions are based on science, here too, adoption drives scale. When we adopt our inventions in Canada, our innovators gain validation and, of course, proof points that can springboard them into international markets. And it's harder and slower for them to gain that market momentum without validation and that vote of confidence at home. Our complex systems, our healthcare system, our food system, are trusted and highly valued internationally. So validation here matters. Third reason why we should care is testing and adopting our innovations at home will allow Canadians to benefit from our investment in innovation and from our ingenuity. Imagine that. Sometimes we make it really hard for them to benefit first. Fourth, and this is where it gets really hard, is adoption as usual is no longer working in these sectors. These systems are straining under increasing and changing demands. Our healthcare system in an aging population, escalating costs and technological disruption, integrating renewables into our energy system. So simply relying on existing regulations and known solutions, using evidence and rules to police the bad actors, are no longer containing costs or meeting our expectations. So it is critical for these systems to reinvent themselves. The alternative is atrophy and stagnation. And we've seen the death spiral of utilities and healthcare systems elsewhere. We all lose. But that means we have to dramatically rethink how procurement, regulation, and evidence can help us actually adopt new solutions faster. And there's some very important new tools and methodologies being used and developed here and elsewhere. Better system mapping, better identification of barriers, new ways to manage risk while we prototype and test and scale within the system, outcomes-based funding models. But this work requires an entirely new approach to public-private collaboration, where you got to get the disruptive innovators, the incumbents, the users, the regulators and public policymakers from all levels of government, as well as the testers and evaluators around the same table to agree on the problem, find or co-develop a solution, agree on how it would be evaluated, collect and share the data, prepare for deployment, and when we get the data, we move and implement. This is not adoption as usual. It's a whole new team sport as an extreme sport. The fifth reason why we need to worry about this is if Canada wants to lead in any of these important sectors, healthcare, energy, agri-food, and take advantage of the enormous opportunity we have globally, we have to be leaders across the innovation continuum. If we only focus on the supply side, we're simply preparing talent and solutions for other places. However, if we become really discerning and efficient adopters of new innovations, two sets of benefits will occur. Our innovators will get their solutions to Canadians and to the rest of the world faster. More of our incumbents will survive. And global innovators will come here to test and develop their solutions. We'll learn from them, and many of them will stay because we're nice. And in addition, and this is perhaps the most important, our critical systems will modernize, will adapt, and will improve. Canadians will benefit, and our economy and our communities will flourish. In this extraordinary time of change and acceleration, our innovation choices are binary and brutal. You either buy or you sell. You either import or you export. You either control your destiny or somebody else will control it for you. Becoming the best adopter of innovation, our own first, is a great way of future-proofing our economy. And we should work as hard at adoption as we work at invention and win at both. Because that's how we'll have the biggest impact for Canadians, for our economy, and for people around the world. I know we can do it, and for future generations, we must do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Elsa. You know, she gives us such a strong message and has been such a strong leader for entrepreneurs and speaking about innovation across Canada for many years. You've been talking about this for a long time. I don't think people realize that we have been talking about innovation in Canada, but now we're really coming out in full force. And when you say we need to be leaders in the innovation spectrum, you're so right. Thank you for your leadership in all of this. I'm now proud to introduce Anthony Lacavera, who is the founder of Win Mobile, chairman of Global Live Holdings, and a Startup Canada board director. Anthony has forged a reputation as a disruptive entrepreneur that has changed Canada's communications technology landscape. And tonight he's going to share his journey with us. And he is just fantastic to work with on our board. What an incredible guy. So please welcome Anthony to this podium.
Okay, I'm timing myself, so we're good. We're good. And unfortunately, I've heard Bruce's story before, and every time I hear it, I think that 20 years ago, I wish I had known him, and maybe I wouldn't have started a telco, a phone company. Maybe I would have done something a lot more fun. Yeah, you know it. I'm going to talk to you about two things. Oh, well, my entrepreneurial journey is what I've been asked to speak about, which I will weave into two themes. One is community and the other is capital. On the topic of community, I think what Victoria is building here and focusing on smaller markets that otherwise wouldn't get any attention, I think is not only transformational, but critically important to building our innovation ecosystem, not just in the big centers. And I think that your focus on that, I think, is admirable, and I think that's why I'm excited to be part of Startup Canada. So on the theme of community, I've spent most of my career focused on building the communities that I work with and the companies that I've founded. I've founded or co-founded 12 businesses over the last almost 20 years now, and I continue to count people like the bald and beautiful Bryce Seschuk as a colleague and partner, who's now the CEO of Global Eye. But he and I have worked together for the better part of 15 years, actually, and that's what I'm all about, is building the long-term relationships with people that are extraordinary like Bryce. We've done so many transactions together and had such a great run together and a great friendship. And I think it's survived the test of really difficult times. And I think it's a testament to our approach, my approach, and now our approach to building great communities. So we focus on the long term, and we always look long. And we always think about how do we build a community of people that are not just a great group of professionals that are excellent at what they do, but the people that really enjoy spending time with each other. And probably, I would say, Bryce, probably fair to say, we've probably made some trades in our careers that we probably could have made more money, we probably could have had a bigger outcome, but we had a great community and we had a lot of fun, so we made some decisions that weren't always necessarily economically driven. And I think this is the fundamental differentiator that we have in Canada versus our colleagues, to our counterparts to the south, where economic outcome too often outweighs the sense of community that you build in a great startup organization. The second is capital. So I get asked all the time, how did you raise the capital to start Win Mobile? It was a very large seed financing, maybe the largest we've ever seen in Canada. It was $700 million of seed financing to buy some spectrum and start a new wireless carrier in Canada, totally independent of Bell, Telus, and Rogers. And not too many people know that story about Wind, but we had no dependency on Bell, Telus, or Rogers. It was truly an independent carrier with all of its own infrastructure, its own cell towers, its own stores. We built it all. And that question is actually answered in a bit of a story. So the answer is it was not straightforward at all to raise the capital for Wind. And it wasn't a one-off successful seed financing. In fact, the story starts in 1998 when I was 23 years old and I had obviously no money, no track record, no credibility to start a business. And I got a small business loan from the Royal Bank for $25,000. So I'm sorry to our sponsor, Scotia, that you weren't there, but you were not there for me. But RBC was there, and it took me almost a year to get that loan for $25,000 because I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't really know how to create business plans. I didn't really know how to interact with them in a productive way. But we did get there, and then we paid them back, and then we borrowed about $200,000 from an expanded small business loan, also from the Royal Bank, and paid that back. And then we did a venture debt financing circa 1999, and those investors all got paid back with a return in 2002. And then we raised more capital in 1999, and those investors all got bought out successfully in 2004. And then we did an equity financing prior to that buyout in 2003, and those investors all had a very good outcome in 2009. And so we were able to tell a story of a consistent delivery of good operating results And that's how we were able to raise the capital to start Wind. And my point for sharing the story is just that there's a kind of a feeling out there, a wave out there of you can start something and it's a unicorn and it's worth $1 billion right away. And if you're not doing that, then you're not successful. Well, I think we've been successful in not building companies quickly. We've been doing it over a long period of time, and that's actually how it really actually goes 99.9% of the time. And the type of people we need to support in creating an innovation ecosystem that'll make Canada globally competitive is those kinds of people, I believe, and is really what will sustain us long term. So I think the government has a critically important role to play. It's wonderful to see you making the time commitment to come here today. I think that I've taken the opportunity, since we exited Wind, I've taken the opportunity to travel around the world and visit incubators and accelerators all around the world. I just came back from Hong Kong. I visited Techstars there, Hacks in Shenzhen, and the Hong Kong Science Technology Park. I've been in London several times and visited the big incubators that are Level 39, Tech City, and so on. And I did that because I'm active in the innovation ecosystem here, and it was Startup Canada and also several others that are sort of incubators and incubators and accelerators in Canada. And I wanted to really see how we stack up. And I didn't, otherwise we're just talking to ourselves, saying how awesome we are, and are we really? So I can really report to you today that we are awesome. And that we have an incredible opportunity to market Canada globally. We're probably at an all-time brand high with our current administration, and we've got to take advantage of that and market Canada globally much more aggressively and much faster than we are today. Thank you.
Yes, Anthony, we are awesome. We truly are, and it's great that you're going out there and seeing what's happening around the world, because I think as Canadian business leaders, we really need to travel more and get out there and see what's happening, and put Canada in those places, right, Anthony? Put Canada in there. Be sitting there with those people and carrying the little red and white flag, because they really do respect us, and we do have a great storytelling, because we are awesome. I think we have to get T-shirts made for that. So now the minister has arrived. She's had quite a hectic day, and she's here with us, and we're really thrilled that you're here. Paul, would you like to come and introduce her? What did we start out saying? We're just going to flow it through, and we're just going to do what needs to be done, and I'd like to invite Paul back to the podium to introduce Minister Chagger.
Thank you. Well, before I introduce our next speaker, I think what we need to do is actually have an extended welcome to our high-growth entrepreneurs and all the entrepreneurs that are in the audience today. And as you know, we've actually got some tables set up where some of them have their displays. So I would ask, if you haven't had the opportunity before the speeches, that when the speeches are completed, please take the time to introduce yourselves to them. I mean, these are people that are passionate about what they do, so it'd be good to actually talk to them and understand what their venture is all about. So now I have the honor of actually introducing our champion of entrepreneurship in Ottawa. In fact, her government should be commended for partnering with Canada's leading banks and insurance companies to create a fund to invest over $1 billion, or up to $1 billion, to support our small Canadian businesses over the next decade. She's the leader of the government in the House of Commons, and of course, our Minister of Small Business and Tourism, the Honourable Bardish Chagger.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, come on. I'm going to try that again. Good evening, everyone. I have to say, we always talk amongst ourselves and we talk about our portfolios, and we're really taking a whole of government approach, and the constructive feedback we are receiving is fabulous. It's not my government, it's our government, and that's exactly what the vision of the Prime Minister is really returning the government back to the people. So when we are there working every single day, it's really to see the success of Canadians, and when Canadians succeeds, the country succeeds, and that's really what it's about. And I have to give a kudos also to Brenda and Victoria and the Startup Canada team for always bringing us together and doing the important work you do in communities across this country. So can we please give some love to Startup Canada? I will also start off by apologizing for my delay today. It's been a most fascinating day, but a really good day. And today was an interesting day because throughout the responsibilities of government house leader and then my other role as Minister of Small Business and Tourism, most importantly, the Member of Parliament for the riding of Waterloo, I know, I had the opportunity to meet with several entrepreneurs in the most creative ways in the hallways of the House of Commons. And it was nice because they would take a moment to share their story. And what I was noticing is something that I've been asking for over the last year and a half was for us to have a little bit more pride, to be loud and proud about what we are doing. It's great that Canadians are humble, but we are awesome. And it's important that we know it so that the world can know it. And I will give a special kudos to Brenda Halloran. This woman was our mayor in the city of Waterloo, and she took on an ambitious agenda to ensure that Canada knew about Waterloo and that the world knew about Waterloo. She took some heat for it, mind you, but it was well-deserved because people are talking about our small town of Waterloo, and that's what it's about. This government is talking about inclusive growth because it's not just about the large urban centres, it's really about rural, remote areas as well, because when all Canadian community succeeds, that's when our country succeeds. Et ce soir, je parlerai des grandes entreprises ancrage et de la manière dont notre gouvernement travaille avec celles-ci afin d'investir dans l'économie canadienne. So what are anchor firms? Anchor firms are hubs of activity and the source of business opportunities. They are the customers for smaller firms looking to integrate into the supply chain. The auto industry is an excellent example. Car makers anchor the sector, and small and medium-sized enterprises feed into their supply chains. Today, the relationship is building. Ontario is home to the first self-driving car pilot program. Last December, our Prime Minister joined BlackBerry, QNX, and Ford for the opening of a self-driving car research center. GM Canada will soon hire 1,000 engineers for R&D. Our artificial intelligence sector, which will be critical to self-driving cars, leads the world. Automakers are now anchoring a new industry, one driven by innovation and technology. They are working with cloud computing service providers, satellite navigation technology companies, security software developers, digital display manufacturers, just to name a few. And we want to see more of this. But what is the role of government? Because the federal government, just like provincial and municipal governments, have a role. And what is that role? The government can invest in supporting our businesses and in supporting Canadians. For businesses, we are investing in clusters. They are the homes of anchor companies and the small businesses, universities, research institutes that support them. ICT in Waterloo, auto in Windsor, or even pharmaceutical, the sector in Montreal. Our budget committed to investing $950 million to support a small number of superclusters. So rather than spreading it like peanut butter across the nation, making strategic investments so that Canada can lead the world. And this will create new opportunities for small business to access these supply chains and talent chains. Notre gouvernement entreprend aussi d'autres actions importantes afin de soutenir les entrepreneurs canadiens. Si vous êtes une PME dans le besoin de capital patient ou stade avancé, il y a le nouveau Fonds canadien pour l'expansion des entreprises, which was just mentioned. So the $500 million fund is created by Canada's largest financial institutions and has the ability to grow to a $1 billion fund. And it's the first time that we are seeing our major banks working together to get into this space. It complements a new $400 million venture capital catalyst initiative, which will leverage $1.5 billion in venture capital. And for women entrepreneurs specifically, the BDC is investing $50 million to support women entrepreneurs in the tech sector. Coming from Waterloo, I don't like referring to tech as a sector because I think technology is needed across all sectors. But it's a conversation that I'm willing to have, and I'd love to broaden my horizons. But I believe technology is everywhere. And if we talk about agriculture and we talk about our farmers, they've been using technology for how long? And yet we don't always recognize that. So on top of the $700 million to finance women-owned businesses more broadly, these are all programs to respond to the very real challenges that entrepreneurs are facing, to respond to what they've been asking for. So this government is listening and this government is acting because you are providing us the mandate to do so. If we don't hear from you, it's really hard for us to act, but we want to act to create those conditions for growth for you to succeed. And we are a trading nation, and we must continue that tradition to truly succeed. Canada has just slightly more than 2% of the world's GDP and about 0.5% of its population. Anchor companies open up access to international markets, and we are helping small and medium-sized enterprises to take full advantage. The CAN Export Program provides direct financial assistance to those very SMEs. As of April, the program approved over 650 projects targeting 73 foreign markets. And this is just the beginning. We are expanding trade with China, India, and other emerging markets. And with these opportunities comes more demand for skilled workers. Talent is a global resource. 1 minute? Oh, sorry, I thought you were getting excited about what I was saying. I was like, she gives me the peace sign, but then she gave me one. So we are investing billions of dollars in skills and training for Canadian workers to help them get the skills they need for the jobs of today and tomorrow. And we announced a global skills strategy to help Canadian companies attract the talent they need. On June 12th, we will launch a new program to allow qualified global talent to get a visa within 2 weeks. And finally, I spoke of anchor companies as the primary customer for SMEs. I also believe the Government of Canada, through our annual procurement, can play a bigger role in supporting SMEs as a primary customer. We will soon launch the Innovative Solutions Canada. This will channel procurement dollars to innovate made-in-Canada products and services. So not only to Canadians, but to the world. But if the government is your number one customer, there is no better advocate or no better, endorsement to the world than to say the government has purchased my product. And this is responding to exactly what we've been talking about, especially ILSAS that's been championing this. So as a first customer, the government can open doors and pave the way for Canadian companies to get their products to market. And that's the kind of work we want to do. Our prosperity depends on it, and we will continue to be a partner with you, to work with you and for you. Thank you so much for having me here tonight.
You know, the cool thing is she's my MP. And I always say to people, I've known Bardish for a long, long time, and, to just see her rise up through the community and all the community work you did. She's a Waterloo Rotarian. She lives what she talks about. And as the Minister of Small Business and Tourism, there couldn't have been a better choice than you, Bardish, or Minister Chagger. And, that's politically incorrect. I know that, Darryl. And you're such a champion for us and for Startup Canada. We've been, invited to come and visit with her and talk to her and share some of the ideas we're talking about. And do you know what? She's listening. How refreshing to have a government that's listening to the voices of entrepreneurs and small businesses across Canada. And I know you've done a lot of traveling. You're carrying the torch for Canada everywhere you go. And we're just so proud of you. And thank you for this work that you're doing for us, because you are putting Canada on the map and you are opening doors of opportunities for us, so thank you for that. And she's such a good speaker, and sometimes she swears in a speech, I've heard, but you didn't today. That was very good. She's just an incredible woman. Just an incredible woman. So, how's the evening been so far? Have you enjoyed it? Well, I hate to tell you this, but we're done. So, but wow, what a night. And the speakers, incredible speakers, and there's so much excitement happening in the Canadian entrepreneurial scene. And we have had the most, I think, innovative and exciting speakers tonight speaking to us about what's happening. So I'd like to thank each of our speakers again, the Honourable Bardish Chagger, our Minister of Small Business and Tourism, Bruce Croxon, serial entrepreneur, former Dragon and host of The Disruptors, Victoria Lennox, CEO and co-founder of Startup Canada, Jeff Cates, CEO and President Intuit Canada, Dr. Ilse Trunick, CEO of Mars Discovery District, and Anthony Lacavera, founder and chairman of Global Life Holdings. Can we all give them a round of applause and thank them? Great. Thank you all very much. As a token of our appreciation for your time, we will be making a donation to the Rumi Initiative, a Toronto-based nonprofit providing free learning content to communities that need it the most, from Syrian refugee camps to those in the Canadian Arctic. Thank you also to the Startup Canada Private Sector Leadership Advisory Council for presenting tonight's program, Intuit Canada, UPS Canada, True Shield Insurance, Scotia Bank, MasterCard, and Rogers Communications. Can we give them a round of applause, too? Thank you. And thank you to Bennett Jones for being our host this evening and making this evening happen. Without your support, we wouldn't have had this great evening. Thank you very much for your support. So we hope you will join us as as champions of Canada's small business community and work with us to make Canada a leading destination for innovation and entrepreneurship. And based on the conversations we're having tonight in the speaker's presentation, we're doing that already. We'd like you to stick around, have a few drinks, network, share some business cards, make some business deals, put Canada back on the map as much as you can. Go global. We're expecting tomorrow a full report from everybody on what you've done. I won't respond probably, but thanks for no. No, do it. Make it happen. And, hopefully, I know we are. That's so cool. We are. Please also make a point to speak to the Startup Canada team members in the room to find out how you can get involved in upcoming initiatives like the Startup Canada Awards, and we need nominations, the premier event celebrating the movers and shakers in Canada's entrepreneurship community, and we'll be sending out more information about that. And the big one for us is the Startup Canada Day on the Hill, which is the largest annual gathering of entrepreneurs, innovators, investors, parliamentarians, and media to raise the bar for Canada as an innovation nation. Is that us? Absolutely. I love it. Yeah. Cheers for Canada. And I'd also personally like to thank the Startup Canada team, who always amaze me. You put events together. You work so hard. I get emails from this team at like 2 in the morning. They're still working on things. And wow, what a dedicated team. And what an honor to work with each and every one of you. So can we thank the Startup Canada team who have done a great job. And thank each and every one of you for being the most amazing people, and let's put Canada on the map and be loud and proud for our minister. Thank you all very much.